I'm Jen.
And I'm Allora.
And this is the
Soul Opposites Podcast.
We're adorable.
We are.
Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Soul Opposites? The Soul...
Mushmouth.
Soul... What did she mushmouth?
Yeah.
That's so cute.
There's something I've heard it called when you're trying to speak and you're just like...
Welcome to the next episode of the Soul Opposites Podcast. It's been a while since we recorded.
It has been.
A lot has happened.
It was a fair bit before Christmas, wasn't it?
A couple of weeks. I think it was 2 to 3 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah. Then we got so busy with work and Christmas and also me moving.
Uh-huh.
And now it's the end of January nearly.
Yep. Tomorrow is the last day of January. So we've got a lot to catch up on. And
we do.
I feel like we've seen each other at that time.
Briefly, but
not like a sit-down, vent, catch-up sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what the structure of today's episode is going to be. But how have you been?
Yep. No, I've been alright.
I mean,
I'm just
let's
exhausted.
Let's start with the big news. You actually moved.
I moved.
Last time we were recording, you were actually, when we were talking about this, we were like, oh, what's been going on with you? That you were actually saying you were starting your house hunt.
Yeah.
So in the space of 10 weeks, you've found a place, obviously, moved.
I was also doing retail Christmas.
Yes, your timing was not great, but
my theory was that nobody wants to move around Christmas, so it'll be a lot easier because no one's looking. Yep. Not only was I wrong, but I completely understand why no one wants to move around Christmas.
Yes. But how are you settling into your place?
It's good. So actually, there was this whole nightmare because we were applying for places and not hearing back, and the rental market's rubbish at the moment.
Oh my god, in Australia and where we are in Australia, which is in Queensland.
The problem that a lot of
great.
people have been finding is that they apply to inspect a place so that they can, put in an application, and before they even get to inspect it, it's off the market again.
I've actually, I think you were the first one to mention this to me, but then since I heard about that,
you're hearing it more.
I'm hearing it a lot, and I'm like, what?
A lot of people apparently, there's actually been people offering months of rent in advance and a lot of shady stuff like that. So we were just applying, having inspections cancelled, and it was exhausting. And then there's one day we're just sitting on the couch and we're just like, oh man, we're not going to be able to find a place at this rate. We're getting close to the cutoff of when we need to have this sorted. And just sort of mentally dying a bit. We're just both feeling really low and depressed about it.
Yes.
And then we get a call from one place asking us to do an inspection the next day. We heard that our application had been viewed for the place we really liked. And because it hadn't been viewed yet, and we'd assumed that it was just another one that had been taken off the market before we got to see it. So we went and inspected the other place, the one that we were just like, yeah, whatever. And it was okay, but it wasn't super suitable. And we would have taken it.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this other place, and I'm almost going to just
the one
be
that
like,
you knew
that we really liked.
So the one that you knew was being reviewed, right?
Yes,
okay.
We knew it was being reviewed, but when we went to see the other place, we were told, look, you can sign this lease today.
Oh my god, what a tricky position. Okay, yeah.
But it wasn't, super suitable.
Yeah.
It was also in
it
the
was
valley.
Do you take the... Oh, no. Okay.
But it was weird because...
But you could have got it there.
We could have gotten it there and then and had a place.
Right.
Or we could have, hedged our bets and tried to get a better place, but we were on a time limit.
Yeah, so it would have been pretty tempting to just...
It was
be
a
over
bit.
And done with, regardless of what the the quality of the place was, right? Okay.
But I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this other place that we actually really like, and I'm just going to be like, oh, it's so lovely. Actually, we're on a bit of a tight schedule, but we're so keen on this place, and try and talk us up a bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they were basically like, oh yeah, your application's great, and They were actually super keen on us. They remembered it, and all through while we were waiting in each step of the process of getting it reviewed, every time we'd call up for more information, they'd be like, "Oh, right, Allora from like this address, right?" And like they remembered who we were.
That's always a good sign. Yeah.
And we just kept being like super helpful and getting everything done quickly. And yeah, we got approved.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Is it nice having a place that's yours?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, it's nice having a lot of my own space, and I can do a fair bit of decorating things.
What's it like living with your boyfriend now?
It's good, yeah.
Yeah, because you guys were having to do so much to make time for each other and like working around work schedules and traveling because neither of you drive. So
and we were like on like far opposite ends of town, of like the city.
So I imagine you've got like 2 to 3 times as much time together now.
Yeah, I mean, we see each other every day, or sometimes we were pushing for like once a week.
Yeah. So that must be nice.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I've been super stressed, so I've been a bit prickly, but it's, you know, nothing too bad. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm just grumpy because I'm stressed. And he's like, yeah, it's fine.
Well, it's a good test of a relationship to be like communication, and
yeah.
It'd be interesting to like learn each other's coping mechanisms when you can't run away and hide when you're like,
oh, I still do that. No, like,
you know what I mean though, like you can't be like, oh, I'm in a bad mood so I'm not going to talk to them, or I'm you know, I'm not on the other side of town, so you know.
Yeah. Well, it's something, I don't know, I read somewhere once where somebody was like, oh yeah, I received this piece of like marital advice once of, you know, whenever you're pissed off, just go for a walk. So basically I just, if I'm like grumpy and moody and irritable, I just go have a smoke, and when I come back and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine now. I just needed like a minute to like balance myself out.
Do you know what, as I get older, something that I've been coming to terms with the last few months is I need to give myself space and time to like sit and process. And it really came to like a realization to me the other day when someone was basically having a conversation with me and asking me questions, and I was like, oh yeah, I just need to think about it for a minute. But they were like, they couldn't sit with the waiting or the silence, you know? And so they were like, oh, so they would just keep talking or ask new questions and all that. And I'm like asking further probing questions as if I wasn't answering, but I was like, no, actually, I'm just taking the time to give you the best answer I can. Yeah. And like, even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that because I was the same type. I was like, if someone asked me a question, you know, I would have to have an answer right there and I'd have to provide it. Whereas now, like, I'm trying to slow down a little bit. I'm trying to be a little bit more patient. And I think that's also, like, being kinder to yourself and being, like, not demanding of yourself to have all the answers straight away, which is really hard to sit with. Like, I'm someone who wants answers.
Yeah, understandable. And, like, in interpersonal stuff as well, sometimes, I don't know, you probably would forget this too, your emotions can cloud the situation. And then it's really good to just step away and be like, okay, like, just pull all that away for a second and just clear things up.
There's a reason I repress my emotions so much. It's one, because I'm a Pisces, and so all I do is feel. But two, it's like my emotions, I always feel like if I let them out, they're going to take over. So I have to repress them so I'll have, like, more control over that. Whereas now I'm, like, learning that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yep.
So you moved. You've been working.
Yeah.
Now that Christmas has passed, has that died down a little bit for you?
It has. I was like just crazy amount of hours before Christmas, just dying. So working a fair bit most weeks.
That's good.
You know, there's some slower weeks and everything, but still working a fair bit and exhausted.
Is the exhaustion because of work, or is it just like a number of things? Or because I'm exhausted, but we'll get to this. I've been practicing boundaries with work.
Yeah.
Which is great. But I'm exhausted with life. I'm exhausted.
What a mood.
I'm exhausted with living, which is part
also,
of
what a mood.
I've had a month of complete apathy towards, like, existing. So That's why I'm exhausted, because I'm just like, what is the point of anything? So I know that's why I'm like, my soul is tired. So I'm wondering, is it that, or is it like actually just work, or a bit of both, or the come down from all the stress in December?
What it actually is my antagonistic relationship with time. Like,
Speaking of a mood.
You sent me this video the other day about like, it was a book review, and a guy was talking about a book on like time management essentially, and how like it's actually kind of bullshit, and it's more about prioritizing and learning what to just not bother with.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's just I'm trying to fit so much in all the time, and I'm so exhausted, and a lot of it can't not be done.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, how? And also, I'm annoyed that I have to sleep, because I would have so much more time if I didn't. And I don't have a lot of energy, just generally speaking. I'm a very tired person. But, you know, my little bipolar brain is just like little goblins sitting there being like, drink lots of coffee, stop sleeping, you'll have more time. And I'm like, no, that's not a good idea, brain.
We've been down that path before.
We've been
we
there.
know what happens.
Yeah.
No, I'm the same. I require like, I can function on 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but like optimally I need like 9 to 10.
Well, some nights I'm getting 6.
Ugh.
And even then I'm like, but if I just stayed up and didn't sleep tonight, I could use that time. But I know where that goes with me, so I can't let myself. But man, it's tempting.
I've had insomnia for the last month, like on and off, and also when I am sleeping, I'm having like really bad nightmares, which is something I'm used to, but also my nightmares when I have them are ones that like stay with me. They're not ones that like you wake up and you're like, oh, I feel terrible from a nightmare, but it like it's over. Whereas for me, like they come from feelings of like guilt, from feeling like failure. So like the images stay with me, the sensations stay with me.
I actually, like, because I have chronic nightmares, and I always have. I have, like, different categories for them, and I call those ones the anxiety dreams, because it's real-life stuff.
Yes.
It's stuff that's on your mind already, stuff that you worry about, or, like, you know, people just confirming your darkest fears for you.
Yeah.
They're horrible, and they linger way more than any other type.
So for me, my anxiety dreams are basically like when I'm doing something really, really repetitive, like it's the same thing over and over and over again, and it's usually something that like I don't enjoy or I'm avoiding.
Yeah.
Or it's like me having a confrontation with someone or like that, whereas my nightmares are like, it's the emotion but put into a scenario that is like actually horrific. Yeah. So like I've had dreams. There's this book that I really want to read. It's actually translated from Korean called The Vegetarian, and it's about this Korean woman who has like a nightmare about like animals and blood and all that, and decides that like she can't actually have like she has to become a vegetarian because like all of it just brings back like the trauma of her nightmares. And that, as someone who's had dreams about like animals eating me alive and like, you know, those like weird turning like factory farming around into like the animals or the people running the factories, and where like I've had those kind of dreams. I've had dreams of like people like physically dying in my arms. Like I have like, you know, like actually morbid dreams that those are my nightmares.
Do you ever get the ones though where you die in the dream but you don't wake up? I hate those. Yes. And then you watch everyone else die, but you're a ghost, so you can't do anything, and you're like, what is this shit?
So what generally happens for me when I like quote unquote die in a dream is like it's actually just I'm forever in the process of dying.
Okay.
So it's not like I stop, it's like my conscience is still there, everything's still happening, and it's just stuck. But everything is still going, but I'm stuck. And it's like, well, this is terrible and horrifying.
In my ones, I die, and I'm like, oh no, I'm being eaten or whatever.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I'm standing a few feet away and my body's over there, and I'm watching other people like coming to look for me or whatever, and I'm like, no, don't come here, it's dangerous. But they can't see me because I'm a ghost.
Oh no.
And yeah.
Well, see, the thing is, it's just like, I would actually argue my nightmares are like the most detailed of any of my dreams.
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's just because like they stick out so much in my memory and everything else doesn't, but like they're so like, it's like there'll be soundtracks, there'll be like sensation, and I'm just like, really, all this imagination and creativity, and this is how you want to channel it?
It's funny you mentioned that, because the point I was also thinking of making regarding this is and I, for the first time ever, saw somebody else who expresses this opinion.
Okay.
Which is, it just blew my mind, because I was like, I'm not the only one. A guy was saying how he likes having nightmares.
Ooh.
Because it's like being in a freaky movie or a game, and then you wake up and it's not real. So you get to like experience the action and adventure. You're like fighting zombies, or like, you know, you're in a haunted house, something terrifying's happening, and then you wake up and you're perfectly safe, but you get to have the excitement. And when you wake up, you almost want the dream to continue when you go back to sleep, because it was exciting.
I suppose I mean, I wouldn't say that I have those kind of horror-based dreams.
I like those ones. The realistic ones I don't like.
Yeah, I was like the ones that really like go on my fear, which I know like I actually have made a note for us to do an episode on like the genre of horror, films versus books and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, because I find it really fascinating, and I love the psychology behind horror and why people love horror. I'm kind of indifferent to horror. Like sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm compelled.
I find it comforting.
I'm compelled by what people who like horror like about it. Like I find that really interesting.
I mean, I can sum it up like this: when everything's really terrible and you don't want to think about it, at least the spooky story is about ghosts. If you're not a believer like me, you're not going to have to worry about that, but it certainly gives you something else to think about.
Yeah, and I love the conversations that like a good horror has about like the human psyche, society.
Actually well written stuff, which is rare.
Yeah, right. So I forgot why I started, but I was like, I've made a note for us to talk about this, because I think if I could have that kind of horror dream, it wouldn't bother me so much. Like I probably wouldn't like enjoy it to the same extent you would, because we have a different relationship with it. But yeah, like my nightmares are my version of horror. And like if someone else is having the exact same dream with me, they wouldn't enjoy it, but they probably wouldn't feel the same way, because it's my insecurities, it's things that I care about hurting me. And usually something I've noticed with when I have my nightmares is when I'm in my like self-sabotaging mode, and I'm like on the cusp of being like, I'm either going to do something really, really stupid or really, really good for myself. And I don't know where I'm going to fall. And that's where I am at the moment. So
Yep. Fair.
But yeah, so you're saying your exhaustion is literally your relationship with time.
Yeah.
So
I just want to fit in so many things, and it's just not possible, and it's driving me nuts.
Is that?
I think the only thing that I can really compromise at this point would be sleep, but that's not really an option either, and that's pissing me off.
So really, your only option is to accept that you can't do all the things. You don't look very impressed by that summary.
Yes, but also no.
I refuse.
Time can find me.
So, like, my depression and anxiety have been kicking my ass the last month. Like, it's so hard for me to get out of bed at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm really unhappy with work, which is so frustrating. And it's not actually work. Like, it's not work itself. It's my own attitude towards it, because I've decided in my head that I want to start transitioning into a different type of work. Like I've reached my like peak of what I'm doing right now. There's nothing more that I can get out of it that would fulfill me and all that sort of stuff. So my problem is like, naturally, if you make that decision, you're like, all right, let's change that. Obviously certain privileges allow for that to be like a thing, but let's just say, you know, I'm totally capable of applying for new work, switching. This happened with my last job, though. Like, it literally takes me, from making the decision, it literally takes me 6 to 9 months to do it. And it's not, like, getting the other job. It's literally, like, I have to work myself up.
Yeah.
Because I have so many feelings around work about, and like, being in debt to other people. And, like, feeling guilt. And so I think that's what a lot of my nightmares are at the moment, is, like, me dealing with my guilt of letting people down, of, also being like, I'm trying to get out of this mentality because I know I've actually benefited from this job for the last 2 and a bit years.
Yeah.
2 years that I'm coming up to. But, like, it's really hard for my brain to be, like, to not immediately go, okay, you're going back to square one.
Yeah.
And, like, what are you working towards? Like, I'm someone who likes goals. I'm someone who likes being like, this is where I'm heading.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling very rudderless, very aimless at the moment. And, like, I have things that I want to do, but I don't feel like I'm heading towards it. And I also, you know, big picture wise, it's like, I can't keep bouncing from job to job for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I want to feel like I'm working towards something. I want to be an expert in something.
Yeah.
I want to be, like, not useful to society, but, like, useful to myself and people. You know, I want to be that. I want people to, like, come to me for advice and stuff like that. But I don't have answers to what it is I want to do. So that's, like, driving me a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm in this stuck position of, like, I know I want to transition out. And the longer I don't do anything, the more my self-sabotaging instincts kick in of, like, quit job, do something, like, you know, like, just everything's going to fall apart in one go. But I cannot push myself to, like, make any steps at the moment. So it's very frustrating, which is making my depression really bad, and my anxiety is, like, sitting at, like, a 7 out of 10, like, constantly. And even today, like, my chest was hurting because, like, just it's kicking in, and I hate it. I'm trying to be kind to myself. Like, now that I've been dealing with I deal with mental health since I was, like, a toddler, but now that I've had a lot of therapy and, you know, we have conversations about how we deal with it, it's kind of like trying to be kind to myself. But have you ever tried to be kind to yourself in a mean way?
Yes.
It's kind of what's like, it's like, be kind to yourself, beating yourself up.
So actually that reminds me, this one time I was doing this, like, makeshift DBT group. It wasn't proper DBT.
Okay.
But they were talking about, like, the ways you talk to yourself in your head and, like, using positive words and, like, positive phrases in your head, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, but what if you're saying a positive thing but in a negative way? And they had no idea what I meant. And I was like, you can beat yourself up with positive words. Like, be kinder to yourself. And be kinder to yourself are totally different things. It's like these people have never heard of intonation.
I do that all the time. Like, you can use kind words, but, like, your intentions are so bad. Like, I can be in the car and I'll, like, let's compare. So being kind to myself is like, okay, in the mornings especially, super, super anxious, driving in the car to my first job, and I'll be like, okay, you're feeling super anxious. Well, you know, you're always more anxious in the morning. Once you get there, you usually come down, but also you haven't slept so well. You know, I don't like eating in the morning. I don't like eating before work. So you haven't eaten anything. You're probably low on water. You know, the things that you're anxious about, like, you're not happy in your job at the moment. So, like, that would make everything worse. There's that voice. Then there's the voice that's just like, yeah, well, you're anxious and you're allowed to feel anxious, so feel the anxiety.
Yup.
You deserve this. You know what I mean? Like, what did you think was going to happen? You didn't sleep well. You didn't, like, you know, there's that voice too.
Yeah.
There's even the ones where you think you're being kind to yourself, but really you're just like,
you're adding extra pressure sometimes with that.
You're pressing on a bruise.
Yeah.
You're like, ow, this hurts, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that, like, other people don't do that.
Okay, so I've been making this running joke for a while now that, like, most of the mental health professionals I've seen, like, I'm just like, yeah, they're grown in a lab. It's like they're studying people to figure out how to be us, because they, like, you tell them, like, a perfectly common human reaction and experience and they'll have no idea what you're talking about. And you're just like, clearly you were raised in a lab, because this is, like, everybody.
I
like,
don't...
intonation exists.
Absolutely. I struggle because I have a theory about this, but I also don't want to overgeneralize.
Yeah.
But my theory is, because you have to go to, like, university and be licensed and do a lot of study to become...
It's the
like,
textbook sort of thing.
There's that, but also that's only accessible to a certain type
Privilege.
of person.
I've actually read quite a bit about that, like accounts of people, say people who are psychiatrists who did actually grow up in poverty and, you know, they had to work really hard to get to that position, but in the field they realized that a lot of the people around them just could not comprehend what the patients were going through because they didn't come from that life. They came from a background of abundance.
Yeah.
And then people going in, I mean, if you deal with mental health issues your whole life, there's, I don't know, seems to be some kind of correlation with not having a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Go figure. And so then you go in without much money and you're trying to explain how you can't afford to do all the things that they're telling you to do, or because you have to work so much you don't have time to do all these things they're telling you to do. And then they're just like, then you're not trying. And it's because they don't have the same limitations. It's like that bullshit thing of we all have the same 24 hours.
Oh,
and it's
God.
like your 24 hours are very different if you have a chauffeur and someone to cook for you and someone to clean for you. If you don't have those, that 24 hours is spent keeping yourself alive.
I had a psychologist when I tried to mention spoon theory to them.
Yeah.
And being like, well, you only use one spoon to have a shower in the morning. It takes 3 of mine to do it. Like, you know, like trying to explain to them that things that would be easy are like 10 times harder for me.
Which literally anybody with a mental illness will tell you.
And the psychologist at the time, not my current one, my psychologist at the time had no idea what I was talking about when I was talking about spoons.
Yeah.
And I was like...
Well, I mean, a lot of people haven't heard of that, but they should at least be able to understand that for people struggling with mental health issues, some things take more energy than they otherwise would.
Yeah. Like, I get... And, like...
That's kind of basic. Literally anybody who's even heard of depression should know that.
I'm not 100% sure
Raised in a lab.
Spoon theory is like something that evolved on the internet or not.
I think it was, yeah.
But, and this could just be a personal thing. I feel like if you're in that field and you want to understand your clients and you're going to be taking on younger clients, you kind of need, not that you need to be up on meme culture, although that would help.
Oh my God, please don't. I don't want to hear my psychologist telling me memes.
But do you think memes are like mostly just the mentally ill, like making light of anything?
I mean, yeah.
Trying to feel like one spark of joy in their day. Good meme. But like, I think you kind of have to adapt to the times. And I know psychology and the whole medical field is like the worst at doing that. But like in an ideal world, like you should be following up. And I'm pretty sure spoon theory has like grown now because my current psychologist knows it. But yeah, it's so frustrating. And I have the same issue with politicians, like people who go from high school straight into uni and decide they want to study politics and then go straight from studying politics into politics. And I'm like, well, how have you, if you're supposed to be quote unquote representing the people, but you've had a totally different experience from the people that you're representing. Yeah. Because people who go to uni, people who choose politics, people who, any of that, it's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people need some life experience before they go into these professions. So part of me is glad that I haven't like dedicated the last 10 years to doing something and now realizing I don't want to do it. But another part of me is just like, I don't want to do that for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Fair.
But then that's life. Like, this is the other part I'm trying to cope with is like, I need to get over a fear of the unknown and a fear of failure. Like, you're not gonna, there is no point at life where you're just like, oh yeah, I did everything exactly right. I have ticked all the boxes. Like, everything is good. Like, I don't know anyone that's like that.
No.
Even all the stuff that I consume with BTS, they have their down days. They actually still deal with mental health issues. I'm like trying to be like, there is no answer.
No.
But I hate that.
I mean, like, for me, I guess, I mean, here we go. But you know, the sort of,
take a breath.
Here we go. So, you know, the sort of stuff I read and where my interests lie with certain philosophers and etc. So, like, nihilism has been a big part of my life for, like, a long time.
Yes.
Like, you knew me as a kid. It came on young.
I would say it goes very well in your line with the dramatic.
Yeah. So, like, I guess these days I've just reached the point of, like, finger guns and click. Everything is meaningless. Which also means nothing really matters do what you want.
That's like,
in a way, it gets freeing at some point.
I think so, and I like that, but it's also something, another thing, I'm just having a lot of thoughts at the moment. One of the things is like, I'm trying to realize that just because I like something or I admire that in another person doesn't mean that'll work for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And doesn't
Everyone's
mean
different.
I need to sort of accept who I am and what is, not what is possible, because I don't want to limit myself, being like, that's impossible, but just knowing when things won't suit me. So like, you know, I appreciate that you can have that attitude in that, and I could probably have that for a couple of days, but I am at some point going to have a breakdown if I try to like live with that attitude, because it just doesn't line up with, I think, the way I see the pins and needles.
You also tend to be more spiritual and things like that than me, whereas I'm just like, everything's a bit random, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I find beauty, there was a beautiful phrase I learned the other day, amori fati, as like love of your fate.
Yeah.
Or love of like how crazy the world can be. And I experience that all the time. Things will happen, like you were saying with your house, and you're like, we've gone through so much, and you're like, reach that point of, you're just like, we're gonna have to do something or nothing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden 2 opportunities come up, right? I find that, I don't think that's like divine in any way. I don't think like, oh yeah, it was meant to be like, you know, I just think there is something so crazy beautiful about how wacky life can be. And for some people it would have turned to the complete opposite. It would have been like this turned into a disaster. It becomes
do or die, and you just have to like make do with the wreckage.
But when it doesn't do that, I think that's just beautiful. And it's frustrating sometimes, you're being like, well, it doesn't actually, you can insure yourself a little bit with like money, education, like, privilege and all that sort of stuff. I mean, as much as you can use, like, take on privilege, but you're not actually protected. Like, mental illness affects everyone and anyone. It doesn't like, yes, it definitely happens more in people who are lower socioeconomic, but it also can affect the top 1% as well.
Absolutely.
You know, and I find that so weird, so chaotic, and because it's chaotic, I find it beautiful. Yeah. So even though I'm like in the pits of my depression at the moment, I'm still super idealistic.
Yeah, no, I get that. I actually really like with what you said about how it wasn't like, you know, divine intervention or fate. It was just like a really good turnout of events. And that's how I see it too. And it drives me crazy when people are like, it was meant to be. Because I'm like, you know how many times things like this have happened and it's just completely fallen apart and ruined my life?
I get really frustrated when like, with anything, they interview people and they're like, wow, it was crazy that this happened. So like sports stars, even with BTS, that like they're talking about like, this is a 1 in a million opportunity, it must have been fate. And I'm like, but then they also try to relay it to like, this person worked really, really hard and like this happened in luck and stuff. And I'm like, the thing is, there are 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 people who are not being interviewed because they did exactly the same thing,
and it
didn't work.
Oh yeah,
and it like, drives me a little bit.
Being a creative person myself, I think about that a lot. You're only hearing the smallest % of the people who did the exact same thing.
So then, like, and so, I don't want to say like those people get pushed into the self-help category, but like there's a lot of self-help that like relies on those stories. Yes. And I have a very complicated relationship with self-help because I enjoy reading nonfiction. I enjoy like things of learning how to better process, better organize my life, all that sort of stuff. But I am also just like, where's the reality here?
That's actually, I don't like self-help at all. And that's the exact reason, because I'm just like, you're looking at this entirely wrong. You are trying to sell this concept to people, which is only making people feel worse because they feel like, why isn't it working for me? And it creates this massive disillusionment culture, which further feeds political divide.
Yeah, well, so for me, the thing that I get really frustrated is self-help is like, here is the answer to your problem. And I like the quote, I don't even know if it's called, like, it would fall under the self-help category, but I like this the category that's just like, what the fuck with life? Yeah. You know, but people talk about their philosophy and how they reached where they are in life. Not being like, this is what you should do, but being like, I'm just as clueless as you. Yep. And so don't look at me and like my crazy success as something that you can model.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that is also included in the self-help thing. Because, I mean, if you think about it, this podcast we're doing, I do not want to market it as self-help.
Yeah.
But us talking about our problems in a way that we hope is relatable can kind of...
Oh God, please don't use me as a self-help icon. Can you imagine? It would be a disaster.
I don't know the way you're looking at yourself in that, because to me, I think...
I give great advice. I just don't follow it.
I think you're a really fascinating human, and I think
Thank
the
you.
way you... I know. That's like, it's a compliment I always strive for as well, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be interesting, and that's something that everyone's kind of trying to achieve. But I think you're a very fascinating human, and I think you've got some sort of maturity and wisdom about you that's kind of rare, and I love when other people appreciate and see that for what it is, and not just be like, you want the world to burn. So as much as you probably are like, oh, I don't want to be seen as a self-help person, I'm like, no, I don't think anyone actually wants to be seen as a self-help person, but people could do a lot worse for role models.
It's so funny that you're saying that, because you're like, oh yes, maturity and wisdom, blah blah blah, and I'm like,
that doesn't mean you can't be childish.
No, but the funny thing is too, like, this is feedback I've received my entire life about how, like, yes, you're like very mature, and you know, you're very mature, you're very wise, blah blah blah, but you need to stop expecting that literally everybody else is and being pissed off when they're not, because that is a problem I struggle with on the daily.
I can see that.
Because I'm like, well, you know, I think this is the appropriate way to behave. Like, get in the bin, you're not doing it. like yelling at a retail worker, get in the trash. Like,
yes, you definitely have a little bit more of the extreme reactions, whereas my instinct is always like, one, my instinct is always to think I'm the blame, and two, I'm just someone who values compassion a lot, even when I don't think the person actually deserves it. My brain automatically is like, how does a person get to that point? Because sometimes it's so foreign from what I would do that my brain is just like, I don't understand how you as a human being can do that and relate to me as a human. Like, how can we be the same species and can be completely out of touch?
I think I used to be like that, and then I got super jaded. Because, like, you know, there's been some certain instances in my life,
yes, I
where
definitely been
people,
through the same.
where people just have been consistently horrible to me, and then been like, you know, it was this thing, it was that thing, and at the end of the day, I was like, look, I'm dealing with all of that and probably more, and I'm still not acting like that, so fucking get good. What's your problem? You know, like, people who, like, lash out and, like, scream at somebody or whatever, and I'm like, I have multiple mental illnesses that cause, like, dysregulation with mood, poor impulse control. I don't do that, so you don't have an excuse.
Yeah. That actually makes me think. Okay, so one of the things that's happened in the last month is I got my first tattoo.
Yes.
Freaking so excited, so hype. It's like a galaxy thing. It's related to the song Microcosmos from BTS, or Microcosmos. I've heard a lot of different pronunciations, and I need to look up the ancient Greek pronunciation. But it's really personal to me.
Yeah.
But when you get a tattoo and it's kind of noticeable, a lot of people are going to ask you if it has any meaning to it. And I love that, because I would love to spread the love for BTS.
Yeah.
Even though they're the biggest fan base in the world right now. Like, we still need more. Recruiting always open.
That's why they call it an army.
That's right. Actually, there is a whole story behind that, but we won't get into that today.
Yeah.
But my biggest issue is, because my connection to the song, to the theory, to the band is so personal, I've actually run into this problem where I don't know if it's I can't express it to other people, or I'm not willing to.
Yeah.
And I was sort of mentioning this to you the other day about how, like, even with, like, friends that we've grown up with and I'm super close with, and they were showing, like, genuine curiosity in like why I like BTS and why I'm centering my first tattoo around it. And there was nothing ill intent in that. I had this guard up where I was just like, I'm not trying to be dismissive, because but I was just like, I'm uncomfortable with this topic. Let's move on. I don't trust you to understand it.
Yep, I get that.
So I don't want to go there. And it made me realize I've made this whole thing out of my life of being like a super open, vulnerable person, in the sense that I will use information that I think other people will see as vulnerable to throw them off, open it up. But actually the things that I am not actually being vulnerable because I have a guard up with almost anyone and everyone.
It's so funny you say this because, like, over the Christmas period and, like, struggling with fitting in at work and all that, I've been literally joking to people that I give people just enough information to make them think I'm being open.
That's what I've been doing. And I'm like, because one of the first things people, like, especially in uni, when people would come up to me and be like, hey, I'm asexual, aromantic, I have anxiety, depression. Like, I was just like, anything that's, like, quote unquote hard in my life, totally open to. But it's like the things that I care about, but in like an
it's like a soft way. It's like the stuff that you hold close.
Yeah,
it's comforting. It's yours in a way, and to share that can sometimes mean feeling like you're losing a little bit of it being special in yours.
I think so. And it's funny because, like, I've done a lot of traveling and I've had a lot of great experiences. And when I come back from overseas, even with my, like, parents or people, they'll be like, oh, tell me about the trip and that. I will gloss over so much because I don't have the words, but I also am starting to think I don't have the willingness to, like, open that up. Like, and this made me really, really interested in, like, the art of storytelling because I feel like storytelling is, and I don't want to generalize, but I feel like storytelling and storytellers are people who take that feeling of something being personal and cool, examine it, but then construct it in a way that they're comfortable with sharing with the world.
I mean, literally, yeah. As someone who, you know, is trying to get more and more into writing all the time, that is literally what I do. And I even think about it like that. I'm like, what is it I'm trying to convey? What deep-seated emotion? What opinion on humanity am I trying to express? And how can I gift wrap that in a way that isn't, like, as personal enough to, you know, be difficult for me, but personal enough that other people will be like, oh, shit, same.
Yeah.
It's like balancing those things.
It's so fascinating, but it's just so funny to, like, realize that as someone who thought I lived really like open-hearted, open-minded, and really vulnerable, it's funny to realize that actually it's not that I'm not that, but
people can be more than one thing.
Yeah, it's like I encourage that in other people. I try to show that image of myself.
Yeah.
But I actually don't have the same level of connection with people that, like, I expect of myself, and therefore I am super actually closed off. But to other people, I would seem not closed off.
Yeah.
It's so weird because the things that I view as, like, too personal are really, like, I think, not, like, trivial, because they wouldn't be, but, like, it's just funny, the things that set me off. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about that. And it's like,
no, I'm the same. You're like one of the only people in the world I'll talk to about certain things. So, I mean, if somebody's like, so what's your trauma? I'll be like, well, Mal. But if somebody's like, tell me about your favorite book, I'll just be like, lol, what?
Yes.
No.
It's so weird. And that's why, and I have social anxiety, right? And I always thought it was like, and it is partly this, where I go into a social situation and I'm like, I'm expected to have a good time. I'm expected to have some level of connection with people. But I put these really extreme pressure on myself. Like, you need to have good connections. Like, you don't do small talk. So you need to find someone in this party that you can, like, go in deep with. Like, I put those, so you can imagine what my social anxiety is.
I'm such an opposite there.
Are you really? And the funny thing is you can't force that kind of connection. Like, the beauty of connection is the complete randomness of it, of, like, finding something in common or starting a conversation and then falling into this topic and you end up talking to this person for the entire night. Like, it happens to me often enough that I consider myself really, like, lucky and privileged in that sense. But when you're like, that has to happen every single time, like, that's what you expect. Like, if you're not doing that, you're failing at socializing. That's where I'm like, I'm neurotic.
It's so funny to me because, like, I'm often encouraged. So I don't think I have social anxiety. I think I don't like people and I'm socially averse.
Yes.
That's not the same thing.
I would
But they
agree.
get conflated.
Yes.
And a lot of, like, my psychiatrists and psychologists are like, why don't you go out and try and meet new people? And, like, you know, just strike up a conversation at, like, a group like, you know, shared interest kind of group with people. And, you know, why don't you try making more friends? Don't you want to make more friends? No. It's like, no, I have friends. I don't need more.
Yeah, and they're also, like, the type of friends, I feel like they're...
I wouldn't count them friends at all.
Exactly. It's like, go meet more people and expose yourself more.
And also to drain your social energy. They'll probably want more than they give, because most of the time, I don't know if maybe I'm just the sort of person that, you know, I'll talk to somebody twice and then they'll want me to, like, work them through things in the middle of the night every night for the next week, and I'm like,
you attract that energy so much. And I, like, as someone who has no boundaries but does have a very protective thing with strangers, like, I don't, like, I've fallen into that before, and I don't allow it to happen, like, at all.
Give them a help number if you're worried, and beyond that, it's not your responsibility.
Exactly. But even I remember, like, graduating high school and, like, when you moved away and everything like that, and you were having that, I was like, I don't understand how you keep doing this. Like, you just keep giving and giving and giving.
In my old house, when I was living with our friend, so our friends, you know, the one I'm talking about, had, like, a cuddle buddy. It was just meant to be cuddling and hanging out, just chill, and mostly platonic. But their cuddle buddy got weirdly obsessed with them and started coming around to the house and crying about how they were in love with the friend to me, who they'd met once for like 5 minutes. And then I was sitting there for hours like, oh no, how do I get out of this?
No.
And they were like, I want to move overseas and take your friend with me. And I was just like, oh my God. Why does this keep happening?
I feel like, and I don't know if it's true, but this could be a way that you're perceived. You're very good at articulating your views, opinions, thoughts and feelings.
That's because I think about it all the time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And but also, I think you've got a good sense of yourself. Like, this is an admirable thing. It's also super intimidating.
But I also don't have a concept of when that might not be socially acceptable. So I don't know when to reel it in. Like, when people are discussing, so what's your dream job? It doesn't occur to me to just be like, to just sort of give a half-hearted answer. I'm just sort of like, yeah, I don't really have one. And then everybody gets uncomfortable. But I just don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, my idealistic brain is like, well, you don't want to be friends with them anyway if they can't. But that's not how it works. Like, sometimes you do have to give a little bit of energy to sort of...
I mean, I can float along, but that's all it's ever going to be with most people.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people think that's friendship, and it's not. It's barely having an acquaintance.
Yeah. I just don't feel like friendship... I mean,
we have a different version of friendship.
Friendship is, like, one of my extreme values, and loyalty is a really big thing. So my definition of friends is probably not what everyone is referring to when they talk about friends.
I'm talking take a bullet for you friends, or they're not a friend.
I know me and you are...
Yeah, you and I are on the same wavelength.
We're literally centering this podcast around that kind of concept.
Yeah.
But...
This is true.
I don't think, in my opinion, you can... make a friendship. I think it sort of naturally forms. You have to put in effort.
You have to put in effort.
For any relationship. But it's not something that you can be like, I'm going to make 10 new friends this year. Like, you can't do that.
No, I don't think
I can meet 10 new people this year.
Who I, like, have cool conversations with, might chat to now and then, but they aren't necessarily what I'd call a friend.
Exactly. Well, I feel like I've gotten as much as I needed to get off my chest. I have, like, funny things that I took notes of like just random things I've learned in the last month since I've seen you.
Yeah.
But they're like not related at all to what we've been talking about.
Okay.
It's like, fun fact. Did you know the Egyptian pharaohs were not Egyptian? They were Greek.
Yep. Cleopatra was Greek.
I know. Well, technically Macedonian, but yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah, but like she wasn't Egyptian.
And like, I think part of me knew that, but like now that I have a better understanding of geography, my brain is just like, what?
Yeah. Some fun... I tend to know fun facts more than I know anything actually useful. My brain's just full of pointless trivia.
I love that. I actually, for our New Year's Eve, I went to a friend's place and we were playing a trivia game, and it's like the game that I dominated in. I was loving it because I just had so much random, and I'm like, it's finally coming in.
I actually, like... It's funny that it's like this is almost like a weird segue at this point, because if there was anything I wanted to talk about besides like, man, I have no time to do things.
Yes.
It's just geeking out over things that I'm like hyper fixated on, essentially. Look, I don't know if it's okay to really use that phrase because it's like specific to certain diagnoses that I don't have. But I'm obsessing, essentially.
Yeah. I have the same thing about because I'll describe something as crazy and I'm like, oh, it's pretty insensitive.
I always flinch when I do that and I'm like, should I?
I feel like a word can have more than one meaning, and like I don't know. I have never had anyone say to me, I'm uncomfortable with that word.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I don't like when people use psychotic
No.
like that. That pisses me off. But if people would be like, whoa, I just had the craziest day.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, yeah, what happens?
So, and I'm the same, like, when you, and to me, words are like about how well you convey meaning. So if you're saying, I'm obsessing over this at the moment, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's not like hey, I really like this at the moment. It's just like, this is consuming so much of my time and energy, and I didn't plan it to, but
and
oh my
you're
God.
actively trying to not like constantly talk about it. Like, it's getting really annoying because I'm like, I need to stop just talking about the same thing repeatedly and just being like, hey, did you know? So right now it's Jeff Buckley.
Okay.
And like specifically like just music around that and like the ties to other things in culture. But I'm like, at what point is it going to start annoying people when I'm messaging them at some weird time being like, hey, did you know Jeff Buckley this thing? I'm like, that's going to drive you and BTS.
Exactly.
I'm like, this is going to drive people crazy, but I'm like, I can't stop talking about it.
Okay, well, please send them to me because I feel guilty about how much I talk about BTS sometimes.
Okay, yes, please.
So like we can have an equal thing here because
Yes.
I've spammed you so much, so this seems like totally fair to me. Also, I know Jeff Buckley in the sense that like I'm sure I've seen some things that, but I like genuinely do not have knowledge, information, anything. So like he's a singer, right? Like a musician.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that much.
Oh, he's tragic icon.
Well, no wonder you like him.
I know, right?
Wait, so when did he pass away?
I believe it was 1997.
Man, I'm out of the loop. Okay.
And his album came out in 1994.
How old was he when he passed?
Actually, don't know that one. He was young though.
Yeah, I was gonna say not another 27 Club, but
He wasn't. To the best of my knowledge, wasn't a 27 Club.
Interesting. And what about it draws you in, or about him draws you in? Was he a single artist, or was he like part of a band? Or
yes.
One of those. I see.
I mean, when people say like, you know, like an individual artist, I never know how to answer that because how many of them play every instrument on the album?
Yeah, of course.
There's always someone
They always
else.
have a backing band, but like, how are they
But
marketed?
it wasn't like Nirvana. It's like Jeff Buckley.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Which
kind of like
whenever that happens, I always feel really bad for everyone else. Can you imagine being like the drummer for somebody whose name is the band? You're no longer relevant. You're just there to play the drums. It's them who matter. That would piss me off. This is why the only arts that I've stuck with throughout all my whole life at this point are visual art and writing. Everything else requires collaboration, and I am a creative control freak. I cannot collaborate. Just saying.
This is creative, and you're collaborating with me.
Yeah, but I think of it more like it's our thing, but I think of it as something more you wanted to do. So I'm here to help support that, but it's not like this is my thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I understand that.
Whereas if I was like a musician who played a specific instrument, I couldn't go into a band and not have the band just be like all of us are on equal footing.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay.
And even then it would probably drive me crazy because they'd be like, no, the drum should be like this. Then I'd be like, fuck off, I'm the one playing. And then I would get kicked out of the band. So this is why I don't work with people creatively.
You've played this scenario in your head quite a bit, haven't you?
Yes. That's why one of the reasons I don't act anymore as well is like you don't get a lot of creative control. You have to do what you're told essentially. It's someone else's script, someone else is directing. And I'm like, wait, no, I want to make all the decisions.
Yeah, weirdly enough, acting is one of those mediums that has never really attracted me, which is hilarious because at one point almost all my friends were in the drama club.
Yeah.
Except for me. So I'm just like, I don't find it particularly appealing, yet I surround myself with everyone. But I don't
think any of us are really drama kids anymore. Like, it's a way to have fun now. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I know a few people who are still in it from high school, but I don't really talk to them a lot.
Think of it as, like, I think it was just the passion for something that attracted me. It wasn't, like, the thing that they were passionate about. It was just, like, it's attracted this particular type of person that I was just, like, I love that people are so passionate about something, especially something creative. So I think that's where it came into it because, again...
Yeah, no, I get that. I've always admired passion and, like, especially creative passion, even if it's not an interest I share in, like like the discipline or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if somebody's super, super into like, what's one I don't do?
Maths.
Not maths. Besides that, what's maths? The words are escaping me. The one where you make pictures but they move.
Animator?
Yes.
Okay. I'm keeping that in.
Please.
An animator? Yeah.
The one where you make pictures but they move. So, like, while that's something I'm not interested in, people who can do it, I'm like, whoa, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And people who are super passionate about it, I'm like, that's amazing. Go you.
Yes.
It's not my interest, but, like, hell yeah.
I think that's why, like, I was, like, mind blown when I was just like, wow, Cleopatra and the pharaohs were not Egyptian. They were great. It's because, like, I like history, but I'm not passionate enough that I'm, like, will dedicate myself to one topic. So then when someone starts talking to me about, like, their obsession with ancient Egyptians and, like, they talk about that, that's when it sticks in my head because I'm remembering.
Was that your cousin? I know your cousin who's, like, super into mythology. Has a dog named Heracles, not Hercules, the correct Greek name.
I don't think it was, I got it from her, but, I mean, it sort of all interrelates. I think it's, like, pinged in my head of, like, these things have to, like, so I can talk to them about that sort of stuff. But, yeah, no, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, it's one of those things that, like, I'm sure I learned that in high school probably, but, like, because that's not the best environment for, like, teaching passion, like, I was just, like, in, out. Whereas when someone who's just, like, how cool is this? I was reading about Cleopatra and, like, look at that. And I'm just, like, I'm remembering the passion in which the person is speaking about it more than I'm remembering, like, the actual historical fact.
I mean, this is something I've always thought with teachers, is teachers who are passionate and engaging about the subject, I learn way better.
Yeah.
If they're just telling me the information, I'm probably not even going to remember. But if they're, like, so hyped about their subject, no matter if I personally think it's a boring subject, that sticks with me and I learn it better.
Yes. I'm experiencing that.
And that's pretty common, honestly.
Well, yeah, it's super common because I'm just going to compare this. So I'm in the process of learning Korean.
Yeah.
And languages is something that I am fascinated by, but I really, really struggle with, like, wrapping my head around them. Like, I don't pick them up very fast. I'm more interested in how a language is structured than, like, actually speaking it. So, like, actively trying to speak Korean is messing with my brain a little bit. It's like,
man, we need to make a language studies group because I'm the opposite. Well, you know, I never learned what, like, verbs and adjectives are. Says me, the, like, writer, poety type who, like, is studying library services and has, like, done a bit of creative writing in uni. What the fuck is a verb?
We're like, screw the rules.
Because it never seemed important, and quite frankly, it still isn't. I've never had to know that. It's never impacted my life.
But if it became relevant to something that was, like, you were passionate about, so, like, obviously me wanting to go to Korea, wanting to learn Korean, I'm putting more energy and effort into it, and, like, I'm learning cool things.
If it becomes relevant. But the thing is, like with learning English growing up, I figure it's a step I can skip. I mean, my English was really good before they tried to teach us that stuff. So when they tried to teach us that stuff, I was just like, okay, I mean, I don't understand the theory behind why it works, but my sentences are still better than most of the people in the class, so does it really matter?
Oh my God. This is why we're so opposites, because I find the process, I find etymology and, like, the history of how our languages have developed the way they are.
I love that. It's really interesting, but at the same time, like, it's almost like fun fact, and I feel absolutely no need to know it. So, for instance, like, I'm learning Latin, as you know.
Yes.
Rather than learn all of the different, like, fancy word terms they've got and how they apply, I'm like, cool, I'm going to learn the words and then just read a bunch of stuff in Latin and just sort of, like absorb how it's used. Like, I know how to form sentences before they tried to teach us about nouns and stuff. I can do the same thing with another language, I'm sure. I mean, I was reading before they taught us that. I was forming sentences before then.
Okay, well, we definitely need to do a language group because I need, like, that kind of approach and, like, that. Whereas I'm much more, I will get stuck in the theory. I will go down rabbit holes, and I'll be like, hey, I was supposed to be learning the Hangul alphabet, but instead I learned about how the king created it 500 years ago because he wanted his entire populace to be able to read instead of just the 1% educated.
Yes.
Like, you know, and I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. I want to learn more. And it's just like, hello, you can't read this sentence because you got distracted.
And like with the etymology and stuff.
I love etymology.
It's so interesting.
I seriously thought about going back to uni to study etymology.
I find the base of words fascinating, but I couldn't ever study it in a more complex way. But like learning Latin, obviously so many English words have Latin roots.
Yep.
So when I'm reading through it, I'm like, oh, that word comes from like this word then, and that's just how I remember it. And then I just drop it and continue and just use it as a mental note for when I see the word. That's literally the end of it for me.
I have a friend who's like a bit of a math genius, and he does the same sort of strategy. Like he has certain associations with things, so that's how he like figures it out super fast. So like all the people who are really good at picking things up really fast have that tactic. So I'm trying to like...
Apparently I'm good at languages, but I just don't care to apply myself.
So thank you for listening to the Soul Opposites podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this sort of laid back... Although I would say all of our episodes are laid back, but this one was like way more unstructured. We were just like...
Yeah, I think we just needed a general vent. We didn't even have a real topic. We were just like, let's just talk for a bit.
But anyway, we should wrap up the podcast so you
Wait. Can I leave you with some fun facts?
Okay,
so Jeff Buckley fun facts. I'm like exploding. So, I figure he was probably raised Catholic.
Okay.
You can pick it up in like an antagonistic relationship towards religion, specifically, sects of Christianity. But you can tell he was probably raised in it because he has references. Like one of the songs on the album is literally a hymn, followed by a song where it's like, "Yo, kiss your eternal life, goodbye, losers." It's great. Anyway. So I figure he was probably raised in that, and he was raised by Irish and Mushmouth
Panamanian?
Yes.
Okay.
/ Greek.
Oh, what an interesting mix. So Panama is South America. Mm-hmm. Greek is like European, and then you said Irish. So
almost certainly Catholic.
Yes.
Yeah. But then, like, obviously something's happened for antagonism towards, like, that. I don't know. I don't know enough about him, but you can sort of piece that together. And then I was listening to one of his songs, So Real, and there was this one part in it, and I was like, this sounds like beat poetry. So I looked him up, and he actually was on a spoken word tribute to Kerouac.
No way!
So I was like, called it. And also, Radiohead is inspired by a performance they saw of him. Which didn't surprise me at all because the first time I ever listened to him, I was like, his singing style sounds like Tom York's, and I was correct. So I've developed this uncanny ability to like combine different like art things. Be like, hey, this references this. Also, Jeff Buckley was inspired by Morrissey, which I could pick from. I
guess.
Yeah, but those three bands, like Morrissey, Jeff Buckley, and Radiohead, I refer to it as the three generations of sad wailing and cool hair.
Yes, agreed. I'm like,
there were more. There were so many more, but like just like little things. I was like, oh, this is really interesting, and does this tie to that? And yeah, like going down this whole rabbit hole where I'm just like, everything is connected. And I'm like that guy from I think he's from. There's a meme of it, but I think he's from the cop show that you liked, the comedy one.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah, and there's like the pin on the wall, and he's got like this crazy look on his face. That's me with like music references right now, and like things that like reference each other.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you've related in some ways, or you just had us playing in the background and we like helped soothe your day. That'd be cool.
That would be nice.
Yes, and make sure you check out Jeff Buckley for Allora's sake.
And BTS for Jen.
Of course. I mean, if you haven't heard of BTS now, I'd be really offended. So we'll be back next time. Hopefully not in like 6 weeks' time.
Hopefully.
But we're really just...
See how my schedule goes.
We're really just recording like when we have the need and also time allows.
Yeah.
Usually the need comes first.
We'll make the time.
Exactly. So tune in for us next time and have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are.
See ya.
See ya!